back to the Independent Pianist. It's your host, Cole Anderson. So recently, a few months ago actually, I had the very great pleasure of seeing a film which I've loved my entire life, but which I've never had a chance to see actually in the theaters. And this is an animated film called Princess Mononoke by a quite well-known Japanese filmmaker, if you know Japanese animation, Hayao Miyazaki. And it's an incredible film, very powerful to see it in the theaters, so if you do get a chance to see it, I would highly recommend it. Really quite an amazing achievement as a work of art. And it's one of those movies where you really do have to see it more than once to fully get an understanding of all the more subtle themes that are going on in the film. And Hayao Miyazaki is well known also for having a long-term musical collaborator, which he's worked on for all of his films, I'm pretty sure. This is a musician by the name of Joe Hisaishi, and he has a very recognizable style, definitely. So I chose a little segment from Princess Mononoke. It's a bit from the very end of the movie. The track's called Ashitaka and San, who are the two main characters. It's one of the more beautiful moments in the entire score, and it has a very prominent piano part as well, so I felt very inspired to go and give a whirl at transcribing it. So I did, and I didn't bother to write this transcription down though, I just kind of did it by ear from a recording, and I thought it might be really interesting to make this not just another video of someone playing some music from an animated film, but also to make it a little opportunity for us to discuss harmony and different ways of understanding harmony. I think the practice of transcribing simpler tunes by ear is a really great discipline for any pianist. Whether you're a classical pianist, you're leaning more classical, or whether you're leaning more towards popular music, or of course it's absolutely required if you're a jazz pianist to be able to transcribe things by ear. It's just a wonderful skill in general, and it gives you a kind of instinctive understanding of how harmonies work and how they connect, and how everything really goes together. So Joe Hisaishi's style as a composer, you'll notice that there are noticeable influences from various other composers. In this particular track, you'll probably hear some kind of echo of Russian Romanticism, like Rachmaninoff, and probably also maybe Debussy, some kind of light impressionism. He's imitated other composers at various times. In the film Ponyo, there's a wonderful reference to Richard Wagner, To the Rite of the Valkyries. Too long to go into right now, but it's a great segment, musical segment. And also in one of the later films that Miyazaki made, The Wind Rises, another one that I absolutely love, the score is kind of Mahler-inspired. There are references to Thomas Mann in that film and Magic Mountain, and so it makes sense that he kind of uses this kind of Mahler sound, this kind of Viennese sound in the score. Very romantic, late fin de siècle kind of romanticism going on. So beyond that, though, Hisaishi also tends towards this kind of very standard popular music harmonic vocabulary. So you'll notice it right away. It's pretty standard. I'd say that there's nothing terribly groundbreaking about the actual musical materials in one of Hisaishi's scores. It's more the taste with which he uses these materials. It's very beautifully organized, it's very beautifully put together, and it counterpoints the action of the film perfectly. So it absolutely hits the spot, the emotional point of what's going on screen. So I decided it would be interesting to use two methods of analysis in this video. So I'm going to reference chord symbol analysis and also Roman numeral analysis. And so I'm going to give a little quick crash course on how these work before I present the performance of this section for you. So I'll start with chord symbols. That's probably what most people might be more familiar with. You'll find them on lead sheets a lot and in other places. A lead sheet is a form of musical notation where you have only the melody and then the chord symbols show you how to fill in the harmony. And I have a book I can recommend if you want to learn more about how to read chord symbols and how to realize them on the piano. It's a book I've had for years, actually. It's Harmonic Foundation for Jazz and Popular Music by Jimmy Amati. And it's very much a textbook kind of setup. Despite being about popular music, it's a little bit didactic, but it's very thorough. He explains exactly what all the different chords mean, what the chord symbols exactly translate into, and he also has a very precise system that he puts together to show you how to voice the symbols, which might be a little bit cumbersome, but it's a good start. It's a good foundation anyway. I can't say I really went thoroughly through learning that system, but I did try it at one time, and I found it to be helpful when I was learning. So I'll give you a quick rundown. Let's start with major chords. So let's say that you want to just have a C major chord, a plain 3-note chord. The chord symbol notation for that would just be an uppercase C. And you could also have an M to show that it's C major, but it's not absolutely required. You'll sometimes just see a big C, and that just means a C major chord. Now, if you want to add one more note to make it a 7th chord, say it's a major 7th, then you'd have to actually write C, uppercase M, and 7 to show C major 7. If it's a dominant 7th chord with a minor 7th, you just write C7. So pretty simple so far. Now, if you want to add an extra note to either of these chords, you would just put a 9 if you want to put another third on top. So that would be a C major 9. Or if you wanted it to be a dominant 9th, C9. You just have to write C9. So pretty simple. Now there's a couple indications that you'll see in lead sheets which might be more confusing because it overlaps with some of the things we're going to talk about in Roman numeral analysis. So for example, when you see they have something in chord symbols called a 6 chord. So if it's a major 6 chord, you could just write it as C6. It looks like this. So in other words, it's a C major chord, and then you have a 6th above the root added. The A in this case. So that's a different than what a 6 chord is when you're talking Roman numerals. So I'm going to explain them both very soon, but let me just finish up with the other chord symbols. If you want to have a C, like a 6 chord, a C major 6 chord, and just have a 9th, they have something, they would call that a C6 add 9 in popular music. So C6, just add the 9th on top. And you can also have a simple chord which only has a 9th added, C add 9. So usually they'll put the 9 in parentheses. And all the different various combinations are also possible. So if you want to really get an in-depth look at what all these symbols look like, you can get this book and it'll show you exactly how to read all of those. So I think that's enough of kind of introduction. Now I wanted to talk just a little bit about Roman numeral analysis so you kind of understand why it's important. Because both of these ways of notating chords are very useful. They come at things from a slightly different angle though. So with chord symbols, we were really looking at the individual chord, So whether it's a C chord or a G chord, we're just considering that chord kind of by itself, separate from its context. And that's very useful in a way because it does help to simplify matters. It's a lot less complicated really to think about in some ways. However, sometimes you want to think about harmony in a very tonal way, in how different chords are relating to one another within a given tonality. So that's when Roman numeral analysis is really helpful. So first off, of course, you need to know how to read Roman numerals, at least up to 7. So if you don't know how to do that, go to Google and look that up and then come back to this video. However, we're going to assume that you do know how to read Roman numerals. So the Roman numerals apply to the scale degrees in a given key. So if you're in the key of C major, C is scale degree 1, also known as the tonic. D is scale degree 2, E is scale degree 3, and so forth and so on, all the way up to B, which is scale degree 7, or the leading tone. So far, so good. So if you happen to be, by the way, a Julie Andrews / Sound of Music fan, you already know this in the form of solfege. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do. That's just another way of talking about scale degrees. You're just using syllables instead of numbers, but it's the exact same thing. So far, so good. So in Roman numeral analysis, when you see a Roman numeral 1, it's really talking about the chord that would be in the scale of C major, or in the key of C major, theoretically here. But if you see that 1, it's really referring to the whole chord, like a C major chord. And if you see the Roman numeral 2, it's really applying to the chord that occurs on scale degree 2. So in this case, it would be a D minor chord. It's the chord with the root, scale degree 2, and all the notes of that chord are the notes from the scale of C major. And so forth on up. So there's a suggestion of quality already, of the quality of the chord, based on what scale degree you're using. So in a major key, scale degrees 1, 4, and 5 are always major. Scale degrees 2, 3, and 6 are always minor. And scale degree 7 is a diminished triad. So if you have anything different than that, there's something going on. There's some kind of chromaticism going on in that case. So you can start to understand why this would be useful. It does help you understand where you are in relation to the tonic and what's going on harmonically in a given passage. So there are also superscript numbers that you will see next to Roman numerals. Let's say that you have a Roman numeral 1, but then there's a 6 above it to the right. That is different. Remember, different than the 6 that we're talking about with chord symbols. There, it was talking about adding a 6 to a basic chord, like this. But when we see a 1/6 chord, it's talking about inversions, the inversion of the chord. It's still talking about intervals, though, but in this case, it's talking about intervals above the bass note. So with Roman numerals and these superscript numbers, we're really adding in figured bass. Figured bass was a different system of indicating harmonies above a bass line. Similar really to chord symbols. I mean, the same kind of idea, that it's a shorthand way of indicating chords, but instead you're showing it in reference to a bass instead of to a melody. It was really used for accompanying melody instruments. So let's say that you had a note like an E written in the bass and then a 6 underneath that E. That would indicate that the chord that you should build above this E should have a 6th in it. So a 6th, if we're in the key of C, above E would be C. And the implication of a 6 is that it's a first inversion chord, so it's a 6/3. So you get the notes of a C major chord in first inversion, so with the E on the bottom instead of the C on the bottom. And if you were to see a 6/4, it would indicate that those are the intervals above your bass. So say it was a G with a 6/4 below it, you'd have a 4, which is a C, and an E, which is a 6. Again, C major in second inversion this time. So it's a little bit mixing things, because in the case of Roman numerals, it's showing, if you see a 1/6, it's showing that it's a 1 chord in the key, but in first inversion. So it's showing you that the bass will be an E, and that the notes of the C major chord will be present somehow. So it's kind of interesting, and it's kind of useful, because with chord symbols, you don't get any information about inversions. Of course, popular musicians, jazz musicians, all people who use chord symbols still use inversions, but they don't notate them in the symbols. Whereas with Roman numeral analysis, you actually see the inversions and you see the pattern of intervals moving above the bass. And that can be really interesting when you have suspensions and things like that happening. So supposing that you have a one chord and the numerals 4 to 3 appear next to it. That indicates that there's a suspension going on. 4 to 3. So you can actually indicate voice leading and kind of interesting voice leading moments in the Roman numerals in that way. Hello, this is Cole Anderson from a few days later on the editing floor, jumping back in because I realized that I left something out kind of important about my explanation on chord symbols and also Roman numerals. So you'll notice that there is an indication sometimes in the video itself where I show a chord symbol or a Roman numeral with a slash followed by another letter or Roman numeral. So for example, with Roman numerals, you might see at this point in the video, there is a 5-7 of 6. You see how I write 5-7/6. So this indicates that you have a 5 chord, but in the key of the 6, of scale degree 6. So that means in this case, we're in the key of D flat major, so scale degree 6 would be B flat, and if you take the 5 chord in the key of B flat, that would be an F chord. So we have an F dominant chord, and that's the chord symbol that you can see I put here as well, an F7. So this is what's known as tonicization in music theory. That's where you are temporarily treating some scale degree other than scale degree 1 as the tonic, the home note. It's not the same as a modulation though, because we're not actually switching to the key of B flat. It's a temporary thing. B flat is going to, once we reach B flat, it's going to function like it normally would in the key of D flat major. And you'll see a very similar kind of notation sometimes in the chord symbols. You'll see like a little slash. So for example, right here, I have a D flat 6/A flat. And all of this means is that in the upper parts, you have the notes of a D flat 6 chord over an A flat in the bass. So the second letter is not really referring to a full chord, it's just referring to a bass note, that you have a D flat 6 over A flat. So this is how you get, popular musicians notate things like pedal points in chord notation, where you have an unchanging bass note and then different chords that are dissonant to the bass note. And that's a little bit of a different way of notating it necessarily from how it might be notated in Roman numerals. So it's just interesting to see how these things are used, but that's the one thing that I left out mentioning. So, okay, back to Cole from a couple days ago. So I hope that at least gives a little bit of an idea. This is just a quick crash course. I mean, the main point of this video is the arrangement of the music from this movie, but I thought it might be at least interesting to have a little bit of this. And if you want me to make another video in which I go more in depth into how these analysis systems work, I'd be happy to do that. I include little chord symbols and Roman numerals sometimes in my scores in my regular performance videos for people who are already in the know. I just figure everyone else will ignore them who doesn't understand them. But I'd be happy to make a video from the point of a layman and kind of try to explain these things even more in depth, piece by piece. So if you're interested in that, let me know by commenting in the comment section below. But I think that's about it otherwise, so I'll just let the music speak for itself now. So thanks for watching, and please enjoy the complete performance of Ashitaka and San from Princess Mononoke.